Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. My name is Robert Winfree. As always, thank you for joining. Um, we got stuff to talk about tonight, don't we? So, what's on the agenda? Yeah, last night, UFC Noche. UFC on ESPN plus 85, whatever you want to call it. That was a card. Not a terrible card. But man, we gotta talk about that main event, don't we? I hate that. I hate that I have to talk about scoring again. I do. I hate it. I'd rather talk about the fight. But we'll have to do the scoring thing first because judging is judging. Alright, let's see. As for the usual stuff, y'all know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review. Sharing in your personal circle, your social media circles, whatever you can do to help the podcast in that respect is always deeply appreciated. Thank you as always. I appreciate you guys. No big preamble this week. No, you don't need me to monologue about my life woes, highs and lows. Mostly because there aren't any this week. It's been stable. I won't say good, bad, or otherwise, but no major changes, I think. So yeah, I think we can just get into it. All right, hopefully we're less than last week. Last week was long. We had stuff to talk about though, so I don't object to it. All right, let's talk about it. UFC Noche. Main event. Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko fight to a split draw. Man, I'm going to do the scoring thing first. I have to. I would rather talk about the fight. Because this was a good fight. I'll spoil this for my end thing usually. There was no fight of the night awarded. Profoundly unfortunate. This is one of the better fights you'll find. Great fight. It's probably I don't know where it'll end on my year-end award list, but it's going to my possibles for best fight of the year. This was a good fight. And I don't know. No fight of the night because it ended in a draw, I guess. I don't know that instead, let me do the bonus thing real fast. They did that thing where they just bonus everyone who got a finish, right? So yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. Almost. Oh no, sorry, that was not a. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, they just bonused everyone who got a finish. Your semi-regular reminder that that's a thing they could do every week. They choose not to, but they could absolutely afford it. More so now, more on that later. But so back to the scoring of this. Scores were 48-47 for Grasso, 48-47 for Shevchenko, both of which are fine, and 47-47 from. So look, personally, 48-47 Shevchenko. However, big dot 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 here. This all hinges on one round. Okay? First round, clearly Shevchenko. Second round, clearly Grasso. Third round, clearly Shevchenko. There's actually a 10-8 argument for Shevchenko in here, much more so than Grasso. I'll get to that in a second. Fourth round, uber close. So you could be 2-2 going into the fifth. Fifth round, Grasso's round. She lost most of it, but had a very dramatic kind of end to the round, including back control. Believe it or not, I actually think there's a more coherent argument for Shevchenko winning the fifth than what one of our judges did in giving it to Grasso 10-8. But I'm here. Look, again, cards on the table, doing it live. 3-2 Shevchenko. 3-2 Grasso's fine. Like, if you give Grasso 2, 4, and 5, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. That fourth round was super, super close. Super close. So I'm not up here to scream and holler about 3-2 for either woman. I'm not. Um, there's plenty of people who have been 3-2 either way. Plenty of people whose opinions I respect going for Grasso. Plenty going for Shevchenko. Like that should be the discussion coming out of this fight: is how did you score the fourth round, and what a great fight we had. I wish that was the discussion we had coming out of this fight, because that's the interesting discussion to me. Not my. So was it? I think it was Junichiro Kamijo who scored it 3-2 for Grasso. I'll say the semi-sentient can of tomato soup Sal D'Amato, who went 3-2 for Shevchenko, and I bring him up specifically. Okay, there was a fight earlier in the evening, Lupita Godinez, who beat Elise Reed. We'll get to that fight in particular in a minute or two here, or later down the line, but it ended in the second round. Everybody and their dog gave that first round to Godinez 10-8. There was I saw some people having the 10-7 argument. Like that's how far we are on that one. Sal D'Amato, it felt like a 10-9. What are we doing here? I mean, look, so those two, and then we have our judge in error here. We have Mike Bell, who is normally a fairly competent judge. No one's perfect. I don't pretend any judge is perfect. Judging is an imprecise art form. So Bell does not have. Again, he's got his issues on occasion, but he's not one of these perpetually problematic judges. Kind of like Sal, who again, a bit more constantly an issue. But for Mike Bell end here, looking at round 5 and going 10-8 Grasso, had he scored that appropriately, and bear in mind, when I say appropriately, I don't necessarily mean that. I just mean like that's not a 10-8 round. There's no system on earth where round 5 of this fight is a 10-8. And if there is that system, allow me to just, for the record, round 3 for Shevchenko is clearly then a 10-8. That's not in dispute here. That wouldn't be in dispute, right? Like that's just where we are with that. There's no reason, if you think this round was 10-8 for Grasso, you have to have given Shevchenko 10-8 third just for internal consistency. Right? This isn't even me homering for Shevchenko. I'm not one of her very weird fan base. Shevchenko has weird fans. My argument is just you are not consistent with your application of the criteria if these are the scorecards you turned in. Full stop. That's my gripe here. And look, when people say this fight is a robbery, it's not that you can't claim Grasso won. You can find 3 rounds for her easily. I mean easy. If you 3-2 for Grasso, cool. I'm not here to argue with you. I am not here to try and say that there's no case for Grasso winning. There is. There's a very good case for Grasso winning this fight. There is not a case for that scorecard from Mike Bell. That's why it feels like a robbery. It feels like, oh, I can't do this to Grasso here. It's Mexican Independence Day. There's a big crowd out here. I even if she wins this round, she's going to lose the title on my scorecard, she's going to lose the belt. Now, he doesn't know what the other judges are scoring, but him to just be here, like, I can't do that. So throws a 10-8 at it to get a 47-47 scorecard. And I know there's people pissed at Valentina when after like she got a brief interview after the fact and was like, you know, in a fair sport under fair rules, I win. And that's not clear. That's not a clear assessment. That's her assessment of her performance. But when she says, I think, maybe the judges felt pressure from Mexican Independence Day and the fans, and, she got booed, and there's a bunch of people being all pissy about it on Twitter. MMA fans are so soft. I'm sorry, you guys. On the off chance any of you are like this, there was a time in my fandom when I probably fit this category too. Let me just be very clear about that. I am not holier than thou here. At the moment, I don't do this. As a general rule. But the number of people who looked at that and went, "Oh, she's such a bad loser." Well, one, in what world is anyone obligated to be a good loser? You'd prefer it, but there's no obligation to it. Second, this is an expression of your ignorance, MMA fans, because this happens all the time. This is common in boxing. This is in soccer, in American football, like basketball, whatever. It's actually not uncommon for this to be an accusation on the part of a party who feels they were wronged. And it's actually not uncommon for that to bear fruit, for there to be truth to that complaint. But because MMA fans don't watch anything other than MMA, in the sporting world at least, as a general rule, like suddenly we're shocked by this. Like, guys, no. Sorry, I've seen really bad losers. I'm not saying Shevchenko is the most gracious loser in the world. She's not the most gracious in defeat individual I've ever seen. But I've seen really sore losers. Having a legitimate gripe about the adjudication of your performance is not being a sore loser. You can argue the optics. But look, if we're talking optics, Grasso getting interviewed by Daniel Cormier going, "Yes, I won," smiling. "I won." You didn't win. Cormier having to go, "No, it was a draw." Like, she kept the belt. So, of course, she's happy about that. But, like, the. Ugh. I hate that it came to that. I really do. So, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do about this. Well, let me rephrase. I know exactly what's going to happen as it pertains to this. Nothing. Because nothing ever happens when this kind of crap happens. Nothing. Mike Bell will be working some major fight next week. No repercussions. None. The Nevada State Athletic Commission will say nothing. Because, of course, they don't. The UFC Dana might do the "no, I didn't agree" or that was weak. Dana wasn't there last week or last night for this. Somebody's going to ask him about it, probably at a Contender Series event or whatnot. He's going to kind of like shake his head and do "oh man, what a mess," and then he's going to move on. Like, that's what he does, and that's what everyone does. Like, the UFC has no power over judges, and that's by design. Problem is, the sources that do have power over judges are atrophied, sclerotic, just bureaucratic nightmares who are more interested in preserving their own sense of self-importance and power and having a nice little thing to add to their resume after being basically a political appointee by the governor, and then looking to spin that forward into something else. That's what these things are. On the If I come across as sounding a little bit bitter at, various forms of government here and some of their functions or lack thereof, like when people talk about the unfairly bureaucratic nature of government, or even look, there's wackos out there who talk about the deep state like it's some cabal of business people in suits. Look, the deep state, this is what it is, okay? This is what it really is. Again, there's whack jobs out there with different theories. Let me tell you functionally what it really is. It's unelected political appointee bureaucrats who are not usually removed when there's turnover at the executive level, and who sit in positions of power for years and years, doing very little other than trying to network, then leaving the position for a private sector job using the friends they've made there to great financial benefit, and then when their buddy or their party gets back in power, they take a new appointed job, and this just cycles. That's fundamentally what the deep state is. It's not always all that nefarious, even. It's just pathetic. It's the atrophied, sclerotic, mechanical bureaucracy failing to do its job over and over and over again because individuals are interested in maintaining their own self-importance rather than public service. That's it. That's the deep state. It sucks. I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on. This is usually the discussions around the deep state is usually more a right side of the aisle discussion, but this is the reality is it sucks for both sides because nothing happens. Like nothing gets done. And I'm more okay with that at the federal level in terms of like I don't mind that taking a bit of time because the federal government wields a tremendous amount of power, and that power not being the most nimble thing in the world isn't always the worst idea. You'd think at a state level, though, especially a state like, look, all states should have equal representation in the federal government, hence the Senate. Not all states are created equal in terms of population, in terms of geography, and like a million other things. Nevada's not the most complicated state in the union. It's not the simplest to govern, but it's not the most complicated. You'd think that Nevada might be in a position to do something about this, but of course not. Of course, nothing will happen. Mike Bell will be back doing his thing in a week, maybe sooner. And the only people screwed in this are the fans who bothered to care, or Valentina Shevchenko. Not that she got screwed out of the belt in some kind of like. I mean, she did. Like, by all rights, Mike Bell robbed her of that title because he turned in one of the worst scorecards you'll ever see. That fifth round score, 10-8 for Grasso, is utterly indefensible. Mike Bell handed out 5 10-8s last night. The other 4 I actually agree with. One is a bit generous, and I gave it a 10-8 too, and I'll get to it, I promise. But the other, like, 3 of the 5 10-8 rounds he gave, I agreed with. Well, 3 I think are, let me put it this way. I agreed with 4 of the 5. 3 of the 5 are not terribly controversial. Then fourth, again, one of those was a touch generous. It was the first round of Knutson and Mann. That first round being 10-8 again, it's a little generous of a 10-8, but it's defensible. And then this, just like, what were you watching? Did you just ignore the first 3.5 minutes of that round? Is that what happened? You didn't see it? You nodded off? You went to the bathroom, you got distracted by Adelaide Bird, who should have been judging, was not doing it for giant periods of time anyway? Like, what are we doing here? This is incomprehensibly bad scoring for that round. Just terrible. And you robbed a fighter. Sorry, you did. That score, because that's the only reason for that score, right? The only reason for a 10-8 Grasso round in the fifth after you've got Shevchenko up 3 rounds to 1 going into it is to stop Shevchenko from winning. Grasso didn't earn a 10-8. In no universe, in no fair universe, in no reasonable universe, did she earn a 10-8? No one on God's green earth under God's hot sun saw what Mike Bell saw and went 10-8. No one. I don't mind being a lone voice on a hill from time to time. I've done that before. I've had unpopular opinions. I will in the future. But I've never been completely alone the way this jabroni is on this take. That's how bad this is. In the wide breadth of the stupidity of MMA fandom and media and the stupid sport that we have, to the extent that it is a sport even, only this guy. Only this guy. Uniquely bad. There's not another word for it. I don't know if it's incompetence. I don't know if it's corruption. It tends, you're better off attributing stupidity and incompetence than malice, as a general rule. I forget which razor that is, but it's one of them. But, God, it's just awful. And nothing, what rankles me really is that nothing will come of this. I think that's more what gets me whenever one of these things happens. Like, it's terrible that it happens. It's bad. But the fact that nothing changes to address the problem is worse. I can accept bad outcomes. I can accept weirdness. I can accept the chaos of MMA. Because you can only control for so much. Like, you're never going to get full control over it. It's too exponentially large. There's too many variables. But what kills me is the lack of attempts at boundary setting. What kills me is that when something bad happens, no one does anything to learn from the bad thing. Nobody tries to do something different going forward. Nobody, or you do, or you try something different, and then everybody else throws a hissy fit and decides to blackball you. That's just kind of where we are. And that's really what annoys me. I feel bad for Shevchenko. Dude, if she'd lost straight up, even split, like if Mike Bella just turned in a 3-2 for Grasso, I don't agree, but I'm not angry. 3-2 Grasso is perfectly fine. But you didn't score it 3-2 Grasso. You scored it 3-2 Shevchenko and then threw a 10-8 in there just to... Why? Did you bet the draw? Did you bet the split draw? Is that it? The odds on... Dude, the odds on a draw or a split draw, they're enormous. They are definitely huge. So, maybe he just gambled on that, or someone he knew. I don't know. I mean, that's too conspiratorial. I'd need evidence for that claim, and I don't have any. But, man, even other bad decisions, like, I can at least kind of squint and see where they're coming from. Because shockingly, believe it or not, most bad decisions actually have an internal logic to them. It's either a judge's consistently stupid interpretation, or even within the course of an individual fight. Like, you can just kind of track. Like, okay, you're wrong. You're very wrong. Again, I'm talking about just straight up bad decisions. And Grasso winning this fight would not have been a bad decision. This scorecard is. Mike Bell couldn't even bother to be internally consistent. If he was, Shevchenko would have had a 10-8 third. And I hate that I'm talking about this. I hate that we're here again. I'm talking about this again. Because nothing's going to change. Because I wish I had a good answer. Again, like, the answer is because various governmental institutions around the world, but in the United States, because that's what we're talking about, they don't move. They do not move. And because they don't move, nothing changes. And that's where we are. So, as for the fight itself, which was actually, I said, a really good fight. Grasso came out orthodox for a little bit, so Shevchenko just launched her left body kick. After a couple of those, Grasso went southpaw. Um, these two got after, man. They exchanged. Shevchenko's jab gave Grasso problems all night. Grasso had so first round winds up going to Shevchenko, just jabs. Both women land punches, but Shevchenko's kicking game, it's weird. It kind of goes away when she has to fight close stance instead of open stance. Now, what she did throughout the course of this fight, Shevchenko, with one exception that again kind of cost herself a little bit, she tightened up some of the habits that Grasso was very keyed into for their first fight. She didn't she didn't do any spinning attacks. I don't think she threw a single spinning attack all fight. Her wrestling was a bit more reactive. She was a bit better about, a bit more calm on the feet about waiting, countering. Her shot selection was better. She wasn't kind of pawing with the lead hand. She does a lot of like pawing and check hooking with her right hand normally. Tuned that way down. Just nope, jab, straight jabs. She was better about throwing a little bit of combination work in there. Normally she's a bit weaker at combo. She doesn't throw a lot of combinations. She was better about them here. All of which led to success. Second round is going a little bit more the same. Then Grasso, coming out of an exchange, drops her with a right hand. Nice punch from Grasso. Shevchenko recovers. She gives up her back briefly. She recovers, gets on top, loses the round. Third round, Shevchenko goes back to work in a big way. Lots of jabs. She was looking for elbows at various points in time and actually landed a few of them. She had some good takedowns here. She didn't go for the headlock until the fifth round, and it cost her, but I'll get to that. She gets a nice takedown in this round. Gets into side control. Grasso gets up. Shevchenko jumps on a guillotine, rolls to mount with it. Winds up dropping some elbows. Cuts up Grasso. Grasso escapes the mount because she's gotten very good at that. Pretty clear round for Shevchenko. Fourth, super close. A little bit like the first round, but with Grasso landing a bit more regularly, and Shevchenko not quite having the opportunity to use her kicks as much. So super close round. Round 5, Shevchenko wins the first like 3.5 minutes. She's jabbing, she's circling, occasional 1-2s. Then at one point, Grasso kind of bulls forward. They tie up, and Shevchenko goes for the headlock throw. And doesn't have a good grip. Slips off. Grasso gets her back. Spends the last, I think, 90 seconds or so, give or take that, on her back. Can't really find a choke. Doesn't find a whole lot of damaging ground and pound, but I value back control pretty highly. Enough, again, I thought Grasso won the fifth. However, in the interest of fairness, putting damage as the highest category, you actually could argue for Shevchenko winning the fifth. She actually did the more effective damaging work that round. If you want to be weird about, not weird, but like if you want to, how do I say this? If you deprioritize back control and you don't think any of Grasso's choke attempts were especially close. And for the record, I don't know how close any of those choke attempts were. You actually could argue in favor of Shevchenko in the fifth. I don't agree with you, but that argument exists. And that's where we wound up. I think 3-2 for either woman is fine. Is a perfectly good scorecard. You give Grasso 2, 4, and 5. Okay, that's fine. You can do that. That's perfectly defensible. If you went, if you went 1, 3, 4 Shevchenko, cool. That's what I did, and I think it's fine. I think it's acceptable. You got one super close round. That's what we should be discussing, not Mike Belland doing friggin' 10-8. for Grasso. Uh, I I wish I could talk about anything other than that. I don't know what we do going forward. The way that played out, they might do a third fight between them. And I don't know. They might. The other option is maybe to try and entice Valentina to move back to bantamweight. Dude, bantamweight is a mess. All right, well, let's talk about bantamweight for just a minute here for the women's side of things. You have no champion, and you don't have anything lined up to replace said champion. Look, one women's featherweight is done. Like they let Amanda Nunes hold that belt because it was a prop, basically. Like that wasn't a division, but okay, here you took it. You know, you took it from Cyborg, and bless you, you earned it. So carry it, but when you're done, it's done because that's not a division. But we don't like women's bantamweight is kind of weak. Like who's there that's really making noise? I mean, you could maybe Juliana Pena. I mean, she's making noise, but like, who's like got buzz? Dude, Holly Holm's still ranked near like fairly high in that division. You got Myra Buena Silva, but that division like badly needs an injection of talent, of interest, and throwing dude, Shevchenko already beat Pena. She armbarred her the first time they fought. A rematch between those two for the belt? It's an idea, and women's bantamweight needs ideas. So I don't know. They might do that. You've got two very the problem with trying to do an immediate third fight between these two is you've actually got two deserving contenders. And you might think, well, just pair them together. That I don't know how much good that would do. You've got Manon Fior and you've got Aaron Blanchfield. Now, I said after the fight, after Fior beat Rose Namajunas, I think Fior has the more complete pedigree at this point than Blanchfield. Whose upside do I think is better? Blanchfield. I think she's going to get that belt, and I think she's going to hold it for a while because she's still very young. But who do I think has a better track record against good opposition at flyweight? I'm not trying to discount Blanchfield's win against Andrade or beating Tyler Santos. It turns out Tyler Santos is pretty good. But I just think Fior has a better general resume at the moment at 125. So I think you give Blanchfield somebody else. I don't know who exactly, but you give her one more fight, and Fior should be involved in the next title fight. I also think Blanchfield's kind of inevitable in that weight class. So, but with this, I don't know what we do here. I really don't. Grasso said she's open to a third fight, but would also like to doesn't really want the division to stagnate. Again, 135 kind of needs help, so I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do here. But it's an awkward position. Dude, there's video going around, and I saw this in real time because I'm watching this on the broadcast because Dana White's not there, so Mick Maynard is. Or Sean Shelby, sorry, not Mick. I'm sure Mick was there, but we actually see Sean Shelby in the background. He does the belt presentations if Dana's not there as a general rule. And he and somebody else are both standing they're standing in the ring, or in the cage. They're waiting for the announcement to be read. And Bruce Buffer gets the cards from the commission official. Bruce looks at them, and he tells, look, Dana White's been told, like, the fact that the ring announcer first tells the promoter representative what the outcome is not, like, it's all on camera. He's not placing last second bets. So he'll tell him, like, by the way, here's who you're going to put the belt on. And you can see Buffer, you can't see what he says, but you can see him say something to, and I think it's Sean Shelby, and you can see Shelby go, what the like, you can read his lips. It's not hard. He is befuddled by that scoring. And yeah, so is everybody. So is everybody. Man, I half thought when somebody said 47-47, if you gave Shevchenko 1 and 3, but gave her a 10-8 third, that still gets you to that same scorecard, and that's more defensible than than Grasso 10-8 fifth. Just terrible. That's a terrible score. That is an all-time bad scorecard. So, you know what? Let me just, rather than close on negativity here, as a brief aside, you know what? I'm going to stand up here and say women's flyweight, you know what? Good for you as a division. It took a little bit, right? It took a while to kind of really get going, but I'll give Shevchenko credit for this, man. For the last a year or so, more, she's been out here beating the drum saying, no, women's flyweight is actually good. There's good fighters here. We're not a crappy division between 115 and 135. And for a while, she was saying things that were not necessarily true, but kind of trying to puff everybody up. Trying to beat the drum for her weight class. Like, no, you guys dump on this. It's not bad. There's good fighters here. And look, beating up on Lauren Murphy and Caitlin Chukagian and whatnot. Like, I shouldn't dump on Chukagian too much, but like, there was a period of time when you just kind of go like, I don't think that's true. Well, you say that long enough, talent comes in and it becomes true. And now we're in a spot where you've got Grasso, you've got Blanchfield, you've got Fiore, you've got Tyler Santos, who's still really good. Shevchenko herself is still obviously a top tier fighter. You've got the division, it spent a while trying to develop, but it did. It developed, and here we are. So I'm gonna, just as a brief aside, like, you know what? Women's flyweight, I will not make you the butt of every joke now. Women's bantamweight at the moment, I think, is the one that deserves that, or heavyweight, because heavyweight. Or light heavyweight, because boy is that a mess. But I haven't joked about women's flyweight in a while, and I think that's largely because the division's improved. The talent has gotten better, and bless them for it. So that's where we are after that main event. I don't know. All right, co-main event. Not the best fight, not as good as I hoped it would be. But Jack Della Maddalena defeats Kevin Holland via split decision, 29-28. 2 for JDM, 1 for Holland. Was I 30-27? I might have got that very wrong. I'm trying to remember what round was like super, I don't know. Might have been the third that I kind of think I got wrong. Was it? I don't know. Look, the only round I feel pretty confident in was round 1 was JDM's. The other two, I don't know, close enough that I don't think either way is terrible. Couple of things here. Both guys do a bit of stance switching. Holland does a lot of leaning. He's done this for a while, and okay. He does a like minor variation on the Philly shell. He's got the rear hand up high and the lead hand a little bit low, and he kind of parries and then leans. Here's the problem with the Philly shell in MMA. This is not why I'm not here to say it doesn't work. It does work. It's a good defensive posture. Depending on what you're trying to do with it, the range, there's variables. Nothing's perfect. The real problem with the Philly shell in MMA, especially as certain guys use it, is they lean. Now, Holland didn't have a problem leaning away from JDM for a pretty specific reason. He's not worried about the takedown. Why was Sean Strickland so happy to use it and lean against Israel Adesanya? Because he's not going to get double-legged. You lean like that against someone who can transition, they'll take you down off of it, and it won't be that hard. Maybe that was primarily a consideration from Holland here because he's not worried about being taken down, but as a general observation out there, that's one of the weaknesses of that posture for MMA. You're doing a lot of again, shoulder rolling, leaning, and that can leave your hips exposed. It didn't catch him here. What did work for JDM here? Holland does a lot of side kicking, and JDM was good about parrying that and getting to the back. So again, side kick comes in, we angle to the closed side towards the back, parry. Suddenly he's got a pretty decent platform to get close, pardon me, and just swing some lefts to the body and head. It was usually that's like his most of this fight was orthodox for Holland, and he just he constantly got behind him, was able to hit him. Good body work from JDM as usual. I give Holland a lot of credit for a few things here though. He's tough, pretty good about defense. Not as good as his problem, I think, offensively came from an inability to adjust to JDM's defense of him. JDM was good about blocking, catching his shots. He still landed. Like, it's a fight. He got hit. So Holland with some pretty good front kicks, side kicks. He had a good read on JDM's rhythm's the wrong word. He had a great feel for when JDM was going to be done and exit. So get close, bang the body, throw a couple to the head, and then Holland has moved his feet enough to get to a point where, okay, I'm going to circle. It's known, so JDM disengages, and that's when Holland would attack. It was a really nice read on again, kind of the flow of the fight. And that particular bit of rhythm that JDM likes to keep. Ultimately, Holland fell down a bit because he got backed into the fence a little bit too easily. His defense was fine, but he wasn't willing. He didn't do a whole lot of punching with JDM. It was a lot of, okay, that's your 4 punches, now I'm going to go. Instead of, okay, you're 3 punches into a 4 punch, I'm going to start my 3 or 4 punch before your fourth punch gets going. And that made just kind of the optics a little bit worse for him. His kicking game is usually a bigger part of his offense. It didn't have as much of an impact on JDM as it has on other people. JDM seemed to have no problem eating the couple of punches that Holland did land. So, yeah, the third round in particular felt a little bit like sparring. So this wasn't as great as I think a lot of us hoped it would be. But yeah, the crowd was booing this one, and I was not in agreement with that. This was a fine fight. Best fight of the no, look, not the best fight of the night, not super memorable, but it didn't. I don't think these two deserve to be booed. Um, Partially they got a little bit of a rocky reception after like the previous two fights, which were a little bit the next one in particular that we're going to talk about, little bit of just wildness, and this was not wild. JDM wants to fight anyone ranked above him. I think he's just about done with his contender series contract. There's usually 6 fights. I joke I don't know what his but wouldn't shock me if they just like, okay, so you're one of the best welterweights in the world. We're still getting you for 12 and 12 for 2 more fights. So yeah, there's that. Um, I saw a few different names thrown out. I think the one I'd be most interested in personally is oh, his name just left me. Luque, Vicente Luque, who is ranked. What's Luque ranked? He's around number 10. Check. Rankings have not been updated yet. Yeah, he is number 10. So you got Jeff Neal at 8, Sean Brady at 9. If you'll recall, was supposed to fight Sean Brady, JDM. Then you got Luke at 10 and Ian Machado Gary at 11. Honestly, any of those four. Jeff Neal, Brady, Luke, Gary. I would be any of those. Again, any of those. Gary and JDM might be a bit of a. I think they'll try to avoid that if possible because you don't need two guys on the come up killing each other. Especially when you've got some older hands there. You know, Neal's been around, Luke has been around. You got Brady, who still is at a bit of a crossroads. You got Stephen Thompson sitting at 7 as another possibility, just by the by. Um, you don't need the two up and coming guys again to kill each other off here. You've got other names, then you can let them rise concurrently. Man, Shavkat still needs a fight. That poor guy. He was supposed to fight on this card actually. He was supposed to fight Kelvin Gastelum, and then Gastelum had his nose broken and the bone showed, and that whole 9 yards. But sorry, I just saw Shavkat Rakhmanov's name there. Went, yeah, he kind of needs one. Dude, why is Khamzat Chimaev still ranked? He's fighting at middleweight next. Why are we doing this? Get him out of there. Stupid rankings. But again, not the best fight in the world. Bit of a letdown relative to expectations, but not a bad fight. Kevin Holland. I would occasionally have this argument with Jeff when he was still contributing to the show here. Holland seems to be taking the Donald Cerrone approach, and I've argued that as well, Cerrone's schedule, it paid him as well as the UFC pays, but I don't think he maximized his athletic potential. He only got to fight for the belt once, if you'll recall. And in that one fight, he got obliterated by Rafael dos Anjos. Dude, RDA ran him over in a round. Like in the first round, just steamrolled him. And there is something of a question about, could Cerrone have retained the title position, right? Like being around that, maybe fought for the belt again, with a more considered schedule and opponent selection and whatnot. I think he could have. I absolutely think he could have. But he chose to manage his career the way he did. And Holland, again, dude fought 5 times in 2020. Man, Kevin Holland has only been in the UFC. Here's your crazy stat, right? I'll give you a crazy stat here. Kevin Holland debuted for the UFC in 2018, in August. So we're a little over 5 years into his UFC career. In those 5 years, Mr. Holland has, let's have a look here. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. The man has had 20 fights in 5 years. That's a lot. I mean, what was his least active year? Hang on. So he comes in and loses to Thiago Santos. He fights. In the year of 2018, he fought 5 times, 2 of those in the UFC. He fought 3 times in 19. He fought 5 times in 2020. He fought 3 times in 2021, 4 times in 2022, and he's fought 3 times thus far in 2023. I don't. That's just an inadvisable schedule to keep in MMA. Any combat sport, really. But I don't manage his career. I don't know what he wants out of it. If all he wants is you can argue what's the best avenue to make the most money, actually. Whether becoming champion is more lucrative than fighting, again, 4 times a year on average, and just like mitigating where you go, your tax situation in that respect. I don't know. But this is kind of the path he's taking at the moment, and it's what he wants out of his career to the extent that it continues. All right, next up, Raul Rosas Jr. TKO'd Terrence Mitchell in 54 seconds. This was a gimme fight for the guy that they like. Um, appreciate Rosas starting to use ground and pound a little bit, but like I can't analyze anything he does. I mean, this was 54 seconds and it was wild and sloppy. I've seen this fight before. Watch regional level MMA, and you'll see this fight a lot. Pretty darn common, actually. So I don't have anything to say beyond that. Lightweight Daniel Zellhuber defeated Christos Yagos via Anaconda choke, 326 of the second. I gave Yagos the first, actually. He landed the better punches. He had a good blitz attack going. Once Zellhuber got kind of a read on that, he started landing better punches, tuned his kicks a little bit better instead of just throwing them out there, started having purpose behind them. Hurts Yagos a little bit. Yagos panic shoots, lightning fast Anaconda choke from Zellhuber, drops, rolls, gets the tap. Nice work from Zellhuber. It was a nice Anaconda. He's still young enough that you can see the rough edges that still need to be polished out, but he's got ability. He's definitely got some ability. And kicking off the main card, Kyle Nelson, I believe our only underdog on the entire card that cashed was Kyle Nelson. Well, and the draw. Again, if you bet the draw, you got your big payout there in the main event. But I think everything else was the favorite. Um, so I'll tell you a little bit about the matchmaking here. But Kyle Nelson defeats Fernando Padilla via unanimous decision, 229-28 to 30-27. I didn't agree with 30-27 here. I thought Padilla had the first, but Nelson slowed the pace down, started landing better shots, and took rounds 2 and 3. So good for him. On the prelims, Lupita Godinez defeated Elise Reed via rear naked choke, 3:37 of the second. Godinez beat the brakes off of Reed. This like you get universal first round 10-8 for Godinez, arguably 10-7. Old Sal D'Amato there. No, only a 10-9. Like, piss off. One-way traffic the whole way through. Godinez just monster stomped her. Speaking of monsters, middleweights. Roman Kopylov defeats Josh Fremd via TKO body punch, 4:44 of the second. Fremd had some moments in the first. I think I still thought Kopylov won the first round. But Kopylov's one of those guys who takes a little bit to get going. But once he gets going, buddy, are you in trouble. I thought he won the first. He actually hurt Fremd towards the end of it, busted his nose pretty visibly. And just a really good southpaw attack. Good about, touching the legs. Pretty good left hand. Good left kick. He was landing some nasty body kicks. Landed a couple of head kicks. Fremd just wouldn't go down. Diligent body work. And that's what ultimately would put him down. Fremd kind of lands a jab. Kopylov waits half a beat, so the jab retracts, and then Fremd starts stepping, and then he steps in, crushing left to the liver. He'd already hurt him with the body kick to the liver at least once. Kopylov had a tough start to his UFC career, dropped his first 2 fights. One of those was a tough outing. I think his debut was just a tough draw. His debut was Carl Robertson, who's at the time was pretty good, and then he had the tough loss to Albert Duraev, who was able to. He had success against Duraev, but Duraev was able to out wrestle him ultimately. Dude has looked all finishes since 4 in a row. He's looking good. How old is he? Only 32. Yeah, he's actually looking real good at the moment. So, yeah, watch it, dude. People don't want to fight that guy, and I get it, but he deserves ranked opposition next. He's at the tail end of middleweight. Um, yeah, give him, Paul Craig or Andre Muniz or something. I know Craig's got a fight coming up, and we're waiting for a few other things to shake out. But dude, 4 in a row is hard. 4 in a row all finishes. He's due a step. He's due a step up. There's a lot of people who are not going to want to sign to fight that guy. Edgar, we had an interesting one here. Edgar Scheider, as in Daniel Lacerda, stopped prematurely by the referee, 3:47 of the first. Um, yeah, the ref got this wrong. So, they're having a pretty good fight. Scheider is generally winning. Then Lacerda goes for a takedown. Scheider blocks, grabs kind of an anaconda. I'm going to stress kind of. But Lacerda gets to his feet very quickly, and Chavez is still holding the position, but he doesn't really have the grip all the way through like you would like with an anaconda, and it's more like that like seated arm triangle choke, where it's closer to that. Is what I should say than to an anaconda, but they're not on the ground. The referee goes to check on Lacerda, and I get that Lacerda's trying to relax. So the ref checks his arm. Lacerda like, no, I'm good. And then Lacerda's arm just kind of drops. He's just relaxing. Okay, I get this. The referee should have checked his arm again. Really should have. This was a blown call by the ref. It was Chris Tognoni, who's normally a pretty good ref. He blew this one. Referee sees the arm drop, waves off the fight, and look, they get it right on replay. Like the referee and the commission officials, they put their heads together. Here's what I would like to see for this in the future. If you get this kind of a situation where not where you disagree with the referee's stoppage, like not a TKO thing where like, no, I was still there, like no. If the referee calls you unconscious in a choke when you are demonstrably not, I'd rather what we do is put the guys in their corners or in neutral corners. So do the no coaching thing, like, nope, you go there, you go there. Talk with the refs, like, did we blow it? Did he actually go out and just came back to you very quickly? Like, figure that out. If you decide you're in the wrong, come back in, ask both guys if they want to keep going. Like, there should be a mechanism for restarting a fight under conditions like this. That's all I'd like to see. Look, the no contest here sucks for both guys, but dude, the ref just got it wrong. It happens. At women's flyweight, Tracy Cortez defeated Jasmine Jasdavicius via unanimous decision, 230-27 and a 29-28. Decent enough performance out of Cortez. A lot of boxing. She struggled a little bit down the stretch as Jasdavicius would not stop walking her down. But, she got a win. Oh, she's one of the other people at flyweight that I think is, like, worthy of paying attention to. Like, again, flyweight's kind of turned itself around. It was a dumpster fire for a while, and it's not anymore. Lightweight, Charlie Campbell defeated Alex Reyes via TKO punches, 3:38 of the first. Give Reyes credit just for getting back to the UFC. This guy was 6 years between fights. I talked about that last week. Had a series of injuries and illnesses. Like he had a spinal infection at one point that he lost the ability to walk. Getting back here at all is a giant win. Campbell just kind of ran him over though. And kicking everything off, again, Josephine Knudsen defeated Marnik Mann via unanimous decision. 30-27, bad card. 30-25, acceptable card. 30-24, acceptable. 30-24, for those of you who don't know, that's 10-8 all three rounds. The first, which is what I had. The first round, marginal. 2 and 3, yeah. That judge who didn't give her a single 10-8, I don't know what you're smoking, dude. Was that Sal? I need to look this up, actually. I would like to be sure about this one. No, D'Amato was 30-25. It was Derek Minor? Brian Minor, who's only 30-27. Bad card. There's 10-7 discussions to be had. Um, in some of those rounds, man, like that. Bad call there. Bad call. And that was the card. Yeah, Knudsen just, again, manhandled her, got her down, beat the crap out of her. Just, man shouldn't be in the UFC. She's not ready for this. I mentioned already, no fight of the night. Shame for Grasso and Shevchenko, which I think would have gotten it. Should have gotten it. So instead, performances went to Raul Rosas, Daniel Zellhuber, Lupita Godinez, Roman Kopylov. And again, you got to finish. You got a bonus on this card. And that's the card. Again, not the best card in the world, but I've seen worse. There was some fun stuff there. There was some weirdness, and it's just capped off by, unfortunately, one of the worst scorecards I've ever seen. Um, I mean, one of the worst scorecards in MMA. I think actually I might have seen some worse ones in boxing. Um, I've seen some bad ones in boxing, man. Especially recently. What was that one not too long ago that was like 11 rounds to 1 that was just total crap? I forget which fight it was, but one of them just terrible. So anyway, but if you want my full report, MMAZona411mania.com. Go stop by, say hello. I appreciate it. All right. That's that card. Let's move it on down the road. UFC on ESPN Plus 86 this coming Saturday, September 23rd. The UFC is back in the Apex. Boo. Sorry. And we've got, you know what? We got a pretty good card here, actually. Your main event. I like this fight a lot. Rafael Fiziev and Mateusz Gamrot. Really like this fight. Gamrot, aggressive, strong grappler, strong wrestler, good overall grappler, got a motor. I mean, dude, part of the reason he beat Arman Tsarukyan was just kind of outlasting him down the stretch. Fiziev, incredibly fast hands, dynamic striker, powerful, pretty good counter wrestling. Might have faded a time or two if he's forced to fight outside of his comfort zone. Love the fight. Love that fight. It's good. Lightweight remains, again, one of the premier divisions in the sport. We've seen Fiziev counter grapple a little bit. I don't think we've seen him do it over 5 rounds, right? Well, maybe we have. He fought RDA and stopped that in the 5th. Coming after that loss to Justin Gaethje, that was a war. I love that fight. That was such a good fight. Whereas, what's Gamrot done recently? He had that loss. He won the loss to Dariush, right? He can't. Okay, he beat Jalen Turner after that. Was a tough fight. I agree that he won, but that was a tough fight. Both these guys are very good. Dude, Gamrot's only lost to Guram Kutateladze and then Benil Dariush. Fiziev is the favorite. And I think that's the way I'm going to lean here. I'm not going to be shocked either way, but I think I've seen Fiziev deal with some of the pressure that guys like Gamrot bring. Or Gamrot brings, I've seen him deal with from other guys. The striking's going to be a bit of a problem, I think, for Gamrot. It's not that he's bad there, but he's a touch slower and his defense isn't quite as tight. And I think that, again, I just think that's going to be a problem. But really good fight. Looking forward to that one. Co-main event. Another good fight. We got Bryce Mitchell and Dan Ige. Now, Mitchell is coming off of that loss to Ilia Topuria. He'd been out for a while. It was December of last year. He had some kind of a back injury, right? Yeah. He was supposed to fight first Jonathan Pierce, then he was supposed to fight Movsar Evloev. Then again, he just had that. So he seems to have hopefully got his back sorted out. He struggled with Topuria once he couldn't get him down. The ruggedness of Topuria and the power punching gave him problems. Ige might do something similar. Ige's pretty durable. He's had his ups and downs. I mean, but his losses in the UFC. Lost his debut to Julio Arce, then went on a good winning streak. You could argue that Barboza fight should have gone to Barboza. Calvin Kattar beat him. Chan Sung Jung beat him in 2021. Dude, he outlanded Jung, but he couldn't deal Jung's power. Josh Emmett beat him, and then Movsar Evloev beat him. He's won his last two, though. At different points in their careers, I would have gone Mitchell. Here's the thing about this for me. I don't know how Mitchell's going to respond to that loss. I don't know what the back injury might have done to him. I think Ige's shown a propensity for some things that have given Mitchell problems. Mitchell's grappling is very good. And I'm not going to be shocked if he wins. I am going to lean towards Ige. I think his jab's going to be a problem. I've just not seen Mitchell deal all that well with the kind of adversity that even in losses Dan Ige has put on people. So, but another good fight. Next up, Marina Rodriguez and Michelle Waterson Gomez. Michelle Waterson is 1-5 in her last 6. Now, I thought she beat Carla Esparza. I also agree that she beat but her last 3 losses have been. How did I feel? I don't remember how I scored the Luana Pinheiro fight. Have a look at her real fast. And Rodriguez has had a few ups and downs. She's coming off of 2 losses. Amanda Lemos, she had a good winning streak going. Like, I actually thought she beat Carla Esparza. Then, she goes on this winning streak of 4 in a row before getting stopped by Amanda Lemos. Loses to Virna Jandiroba. She needs to bounce back here. If she can't beat Waterson, that's not a great indicator. She does things that have given Waterson plenty of problems in the past. I am going to lean towards Rodriguez, but that's a bit tougher than you might think. I mean, she's... Actually, do I think Waterson's just going to out-wrestle her? That's the question. Because she might. Waterson's actually a decent wrestler. I'm still going to go with Rodriguez. I don't think I'm at a point where I'm going to pick Waterson anymore. But there is a path to victory for Michelle Waterson here that should not be ignored. All right, next up we've got Brian Battle and AJ Fletcher. Both gentlemen have fought in the UFC. Battle, he had the loss to Renat Fakhretdinov. But I think he bounced back from that, right? Yeah, he missed weight, but he beat Gabe Green. And Fletcher, 10-2. He's 0-2 in the UFC. 1-2. Yeah, he beat. Okay, so he lost. Tough fight with Semmelsberger. Tough fight with Angelosa. Beat Temba Gorimbo. Not a bad. There's some potential here for this to be an entertaining fight. I feel okay picking Battle. Another good fight here actually. Ricardo Ramos and Charles Jourdain. Ramos beat Danny Chavez. That was a while ago, though. That was over a year ago. 16 months. What's he been doing? All right, he was supposed to fight Austin Lingo earlier this year and then weighed 154 for a frickin' featherweight fight. Dude, you weighed in at an acceptable lightweight limit, my guy. It's just terrible. He was supposed to fight Danny Henry in late 2022. Henry pulled out of that one. Habo's just kind of fun. A little bit of a wild man. Not afraid of the fight. Jordan is likes things a bit more technical. Coming off of that weird, I say weird win over Kron Gracie. Like Gracie just tried to pull guard and then butt scooted and it was embarrassing. Lost to Shane Burgos and Nathaniel Wood before that. The layoff for Hamos is kind of is a little bit of a problem for me in terms of picking him. Not sure he's the kind of cage cutter you need to necessarily corral Jordan either. Yeah. Let me have a look here at the odds. Yeah, assuming they've been posted for this one. Let's have a look. Yeah, according to the odds, Jordan is a favorite. It's fairly close, but yeah, that layoff, man. And that weight missed by that much. I don't know what happened, clearly, but I'm I can see how Hamos wins this fight. I really can, but what do I think is more likely? I actually do think I'm going to lean towards Jordan there. On the prelims, we have Miles Johns and Dan Argueta. Johns has been a little up and down in the UFC. Coming off a win over Vince Morales. Argueta. Have a look here. 9-1. He's what? 1-1 in the 1-1 in the UFC. Also has a no contest. Yeah, his fight with Ronnie Lawrence. Again, bad stoppage, so they ruled it a no contest, which I think was fair, all things considered. Tough one there. I think I'm actually leaning. I'm actually leaning towards Argueta, personally. Um, yeah, he's shown that he's actually pretty good, and I don't mean that Johns is bad, but because I don't think Miles Johns is a bad fighter, but he struggled to. He struggled a little bit with the wrestlers. He struggled down the stretch. I think his cardio's been a bit of an issue at times, even in fights he's won. Yeah, I'll go with Argueta there. Welterweight, Tim Means and Andre Fialho. This has action fight written all over it. So there's that. Something happened to that fight? And it's no, it's still listed there. Hmm. So it was not listed on one of them. Doesn't matter. Um, Here's the thing about Fialho. Three fight losing streak. Jake Matthews, Muslim Salikov, Joaquin Buckley. He's shown a fair amount of ability. Even in losses, he's a pretty darn good fighter. But he's got power, fairly technical, just gets a little bit out over his skis, and he fades a little bit down the stretch. And Tim Means, if nothing else, he will be there the whole fight. He's on a three-fight losing streak as well. Losses to Kevin Holland, Max Griffin, and Alex Morono. Yeah. Means is 39. Fialho is only 20. Dude, 10 years younger. All right, I'm going with Fialho. That age gap is big. That's a pretty big predictor. It's not always right, but it's the odds on that one are actually again the younger fighter, especially when he gets like 10 years. The odds on the younger fighter tend to be better. I'll go with Fialho there. But again, action fight written all over that. Not going to be shocked one iota if Means perseveres through a tough first round and just kind of wears him down. Middleweight, Jacob Malkoun and Cody Brundage. Malkoun, 7-2, 3-2 in the UFC. Had a pretty decent win over Nick Maximov last time. That was almost a year ago, though. Brundage, 8-5, just 2-4 in the UFC. Losses to Michal Luxeja, Rodolfo Vieira, Seducas Dumas. I'm okay going with Malkoun here. I think Malkoun probably just out wrestles him. Heavyweights. Oh, why? So Jake Collier and Muhammad Usman. I don't know what you want me to say about this one. It's embarrassing. Usman is what? 0-2 in the UFC? Excuse me, 2-0 in the UFC? Yeah. So wins over Zach Paunga and Justin Tafa, or Junior Tafa, excuse me. Collier's the more seasoned fighter. He's also on a 3-fight losing streak. Yeah, they're still trying to be nice to Usman. Let's go with Usman there. Let's see, Mizuki Inoue and Hannah Goldie. Let's see, Inoue 1-1 in the UFC. Beat Wu Yanan. Decent little fight there. Lost to Amanda Lemos. Turns out not a lot of shame in that one. You know, Lemos went on to fight for the belt. Dude, that was 3 years ago. What happened to her? She had an ACL injury, okay, in 2020. I guess that just took a long time to heal. Or might have had ancillary injuries, I don't know. The layoff there is a big factor here. Goldie just 1-3 in the UFC. Um, Losses to Miranda Granger, Diana Belbicha, and Molly McCann. I don't know, man. That layoff, that's a pretty big layoff to have to overcome. I think she can do it. And Goldie has just not looked. She hasn't even looked all that good in her UFC fights. Yeah. In a way, looked okay in her couple of I don't know. That's tough. That's a tough one. Yeah, I'm gonna lean. I'm okay leaning towards Inoue, but only because like Goldie, another one of those fighters who just shouldn't have been in the UFC when she was. And kicking everything off, we have Montserrat Rendon and Tamiris Vidal. So, Montserrat Rendon is 5-0, making her UFC debut. See, so yeah, I'm always leery of someone coming in that low. And Vidal, 7-1. She has losses in the UFC, I believe. No, one. She beat Ramona Pascual in her UFC debut. Okay. I need a quick look at something on these two. 5-6-68 versus 5-8-68. I'm actually kind of leaning towards Rendon here. Nothing against Vidal, but it feels like they. Yeah, I don't know. I'll lean towards Rendon. Yeah. But again, someone getting into the UFC that junior in their career, I'm always leery of that. And yeah, that is the card. So Saturday, that card's gonna start a little weak. Those first like 3, 4 fights, there's not a lot there. After that, we got some good stuff on tap. So Saturday night, come by, say hello. Always appreciate it. All right, what do we got for news of the week? Okay, let's start with the big one here. So TKO officially exists. This is the entity that Endeavor has created. The merger basically of the UFC and WWE. They're a thing. They're on the New York Stock Exchange. They their stock trades a little over $100 a share. Their current valuation I think was 20 something, $21 billion. So that's a thing. Um, there's a few things related to this I think we need to discuss. So one of them is the sort of general corporate structure. Um, does technically give Vince McMahon veto power. Like there's the board of directors, and technically Vince. I'm trying to remember how this broke down. I want to say there's 11 seats on the board, and WWE personnel held 4 or 5, and then the like WME people had the other had technically a majority there. But in the general structure, like Vince is below Artie Emanuel and I think maybe one other person, but then he's technically over both UFC and WWE, which are still run by Dana White and Nick Khan, respectively, on a managerial level. So technically, Vince has veto power over UFC-related stuff. Now, I don't expect there to be much of that. Probably there should be less, because hey, guys, as a minor side note here, you are aware that Vince McMahon has never successfully promoted something other than professional wrestling, right? And he's tried. Boy, has he tried, mostly failed. There's an argument to be had about the XFL and how the NFL like violated a bunch of antitrust stuff before becoming a protected monopoly. And I think there's some legitimate arguments to be had around that, but like, most of what he's tried to do that isn't WWE has kind of fallen flat on its face. So I don't know that we really want his hand in anything the UFC does. We'll find out very quickly if they. I don't expect he'll be involved in like the production level, but if they start referring to, title opportunities and whatever other Vinceisms, don't like calling it a belt. It's a belt. It's a physical belt. That'll be profoundly annoying. I hate it in WWE when I have to cover it. I can't tell you how much I would loathe that if it crept into the MMA space. So there's that. Again, I don't expect a whole lot to come of it. I don't even expect Vince to be there in 2 years. I kind of think they'll vote him out, but we'll wait and see. Um, I don't know. So we got a little bit of like the BS sales talk you get out of people selling stock. So I think it was Lawrence Epstein. It was Epstein or it was Shapiro who was saying, what we want to do is turn every UFC fan into a WWE fan and every WWE fan into a UFC fan. Dana did the kind of stupidly smug, yeah, that's never going to happen thing. Okay. Here's the thing about this. Do I ever think they're going to get to that point? No. No, I don't. Is there crossover? Yes. Look, there's market research on this. I hinted at this earlier. Let me again. There's data, actual data on this. MMA fans don't watch other sports. They don't watch much boxing. They don't watch basketball. They don't watch football. They don't watch soccer. They don't watch hockey. They don't watch they don't watch stick and ball sports. They do watch pro wrestling. Not all of them, but if there's another sport adjacent thing they watch that isn't MMA, it is pro wrestling. Now, some of that data could stand to be updated. It's a few years old, but that's the data that is available. That's the crossover. That's the only crossover for MMA fans. Like that's it. MMA has more in common with pro wrestling than it does any other combat sport. A lot of MMA fans hate to hear that. It's the truth. The history of professional wrestling spins out of catch wrestling exhibitions. That's also the genesis of MMA. Because catch wrestling kind of comes out of pancration if you want to go way back machine. Then there's like the great divide between MMA and pro wrestling happens when certain wrestlers decided wrestling is hard and this is easier if we work together instead of against each other. And again, this is where like a lot of the catch purists kind of break off from pro wrestling, but that's kind of the genesis. And MMA's presentation is more like pro wrestling than it is boxing. Some of the first MMA organizations, I mean, again, early UFC, Pancrase. I mean, the original Pancrase actually predates the UFC, and the history of Japanese MMA is interesting because you have. I'm not saying Pancrase had no worked fights. There's other elements of Japanese MMA, early rings, Shudo, sort of. What was the other one? I forget. That because Pancrase had a couple of work matches that looked like they were worked, or more often what you would get out of this, believe it or not, instead of the full match being a work, it's kind of like, okay, we're going to fight for 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, hold on. Let's work for the next three, and then the last three will be a shoot again. You actually got a bit more of that. Um, so it's weird, man. It's just weird. But Pancrase sprang up out of, again, a bunch of catch wrestling guys. Minoru Suzuki, Kanahara, I want to say. Hang on, let me get this right because I don't want to be killed for this one. Yeah, sorry, not it was Masakatsu Funaki, Minoru Suzuki, Takaku Fuke. Um, yeah, it you had a bunch of legitimate catch guys who came up with how we could. I mean, the whole premise of early Pancrase is okay. Pro wrestling rules. That's why there's no punches to the face, among other things, and rope breaks and whatnot, but legit. And it was what it was at the time. And that's kind of that's some of the history of this. It's more entwined with pro wrestling than legitimate sport. Because I respect the heck out of pro wrestling. It's not a legitimate sport. They'll tell you that. They just don't want to be dismissed because it's a work and a show instead of a shoot. Fair enough. I have no problem giving them that respect. I enjoy pro wrestling from time to time. Like I'm not demeaning it. Um, but here's the problem with trying to get to a point where you're going to have that much overlap. There's a couple of problems with that. At the time when there was more overlap, the WWE product was different. It's not quite Attitude Era stuff, but it's very much ruthless aggression. Um, that mid 2000s to like early 2010s, like that area. Um, and that era of WWE professional wrestling actually did have a lot of overlap with what the UFC was doing at the time. That's not the current WWE product, and what I'm about to say might come across as derisive. I don't care for this direction, but that doesn't mean it's not legitimate. They went PG because the advertisement was better and their audience had aged out. And nowadays, dude, you can go to WWE events. You can watch them. Like, they're. Because professional wrestling is a vast and varied landscape, you can do a lot in the genre. WWE at the moment is basically the MCU, if I can draw that comparison. It's homogenized, it's the same thing, it's the same faces, and it's for kids. That doesn't mean it's stupid, that doesn't mean it's dumb. Again, that doesn't mean that it's, again, stupid. Because just because something is aimed at children doesn't mean it's bad or infantile or, again, or stupid. You can have very good stuff there, and the WWE occasionally produces good stuff. But their audience is children. The UFC's audience is not children. So there's a core of the professional wrestling fan base that might enjoy MMA. I don't know that portion of the professional wrestling fan base is all that high on the WWE at the moment, is maybe more the issue. And to say nothing of how this might play when we get sued again. I mean, look, the UFC, the WWE as part of this had to like list their competitors, and this is part of like what you have to do when you file this kind of business merger and whatnot. Like, who are your competitors in the space? What are you worried about? And they listed like AEW, New Japan, and I think Impact, which is comical. Like, you have two basic monopolies here joining together for a super monopoly. Now, in fairness, lest I be accused of hating AEW, the the distance between the UFC and their number two competitor, whoever you happen to think that is, because Bellator is probably getting bought. There's a rumor floated earlier this week that Bellator wasn't gonna, that talks with PFL had failed and Bellator was just gonna close. I don't think there was any validity to that, but internet stuff. So you can think whether that you think that's PFL or you buy into the BS that comes out of one championship's PR department. I don't know why you would, but you might. Whatever you think is the second biggest deal in the MMA space. The distance between WWE and AEW is unequivocally the number two. The distance between WWE and AEW is not the distance between the UFC and PFL. I'll say PFL for the sake of argument here. The distance isn't that great, but it's still pretty darn big. I know you're out here going, you wrestling guys are going, but AEW just had the biggest crowd in pro wrestling history at Wembley. Yeah, they did. And WWE got paid. They disclosed this. Wasn't it like $14 million to run in Wales at Clash at the Castle? Their Clash at the Castle event. They got paid like $14 million for that. And that itself was still. They could have run Wembley and they could have put that many people there. They got a giant site fee to go somewhere else. Um, look, this is not to knock AEW. I got my issues with some of their product, but I'm happy they exist to the extent that like pro wrestling needs a healthier ecosystem. MMA needs a healthier ecosystem. Pro wrestling had this problem for quite a while, and AEW kind of has made a few waves in the marketplace. They're doing their own thing. And that's maybe the best way they can go about this because they aren't really in a position to compete head to head all that on equal footing with, the WWE's machinery. And that's fine. Again, I don't begrudge AEW existing. I'm glad they do. Fine. But they're still a relatively distant number two in the grand economic scene of professional wrestling. The the disparity here could also be summed up as This is true for the UFC. For every dollar generated by the sport of mixed martial arts a year, 90 cents of that goes to the UFC. That, dude, Bellator's partially being sold because they don't make money. Like that's just the reality of trying to exist in the MMA space at the moment. The UFC has corrupted the market to the point where there is no competition. They've admitted as much. They don't care that the Saudis are throwing money at the PFL because the money that can be thrown at that, almost no matter how much it is, isn't going to deal with their restrictive contracts and their market share. On the professional wrestling side of things, I kind of doubt that 90 cents of every dollar generated by professional wrestling in any given year goes to WWE. That being said, it's probably still north of 50 cents for every dollar. They are still the majority earner and generator in the pro wrestling space. And you have to think about this on a few different levels. They have two major television programs that take up 5 hours of airtime on major networks every week. They also have the NXT show, if you care about that. They're a pretty good driver of content to Peacock, to the extent that you want to consider Peacock a real thing. They move more merchandise than anyone else. I'm unequivocally. They sell mountains of merchandise. They sell tickets regularly. They tour the globe. They were in India last week. 2 weeks ago at this point? One of the two. Like, they are the dominant market force worldwide. Doesn't mean there aren't other players. New Japan can still have big shows. AEW's, again, chugging along. Impact is a joke. And has been for a long time. But, again, you want to really break this down. Does WWE earn a majority of every dollar generated by professional wrestling year over year? Yeah, I'll buy that. If it's not a majority, it's a definitive largest plurality. They are they are definitively the single largest entity in that space, and you've got two of those now. So the problem with trying to get this crossover, again, one, you got one product that's aimed at the moment primarily at children, and one that definitively is not. The entire, I understand why there's crossover, but the fundamental appeal at this point has drifted apart. And look, part of the reason a good chunk of MMA fans resent association with pro wrestling is they've still got the chip on their shoulder about the sport not being viewed as legitimate, and they resent being associated with CrossFit drama nerds, for the most demeaning expression I could think of. Professional wrestling fans don't actually care about legitimacy. They want fantasy, and they hate the reality of MMA. And this is because reality, is not always interesting and can be boring. And look, it's just kind of the differences at this point. And that doesn't mean there's no crossover, but dude, here's the other thing about this, man. I hate phrasing it this way, so please don't kill me. A giant chunk of the UFC's audience, certainly a vocal contingent, does lean to the political right in the United States. And if you're about to say, but didn't Linda McMahon, work for Trump or whatnot, this is not about the brass at WWE. It's about the fan base. I don't think the WWE's fan base leans the same political direction that MMA fans do. And that's not, look, they've also, WWE in particular, has a large enough fan base that it's not actually going to divide down the political line. You're actually going to have different people, different points of view, because you get a large enough fan base. It does split closer to 50-50. But, yeah, here's the other thing about this. Can we just be honest about, another thing I'm going to have to just be honest about. The communities, for want of a better word, especially online, are not welcoming. Which is weird, but they're not. Wrestling fans have their guard up until they're sure you're not there to make fun of them. MMA fans have lost their patience with people who don't understand at least the base intricacies of how fighting actually works. And that breeds, again, that just kind of breeds clashing. So, I don't know. Look, they also did tip their hand about what they really want. What they want are giant site fees to bring big weekends. And they could do this. It's not at all impossible for a major city or a state's chamber of commerce to throw enough money at this organization to get them to bring a SmackDown on Friday, a UFC event Saturday, and a WWE pay-per-view Sunday. That's a trio of events that could happen, and they could get paid a lot for it because, look, man, that does generate revenue. WWE coming, the circus coming to town brings in revenue. So I imagine that's a bit more the actual game plan is, again, extorting taxpayers for site fees. Uh, last thing I want to say, yeah, I need to finish this. Last thing I want to say about this. Um, so again, one of them, I want to say this was Shapiro and the other one was Epstein. Was deflecting criticism, talk about fighter pay by saying, no, fighter pay's risen a lot. It's actually outpacing revenue, which is not true. And you wonder how I know it's not true? How I know he's lying through his teeth? The same day, the there was a motion filed in the ongoing lawsuit where the attorneys for, again, WME, Zuffa, whatever, where the respondent, the defendant's attorneys, again the UFC's, basically admitted that the opposite was true, and they're just, again, they're filing a motion to get to compel the other side to respond, and legal crap, doesn't really matter. The weeds of that are immaterial to the discussion. But either one of these guys is lying, trying to sell something, or the lawyers are lying in federal court. I know which one I think is more true. Just throwing it out there. But yeah, TKO, now a thing. God help us all. Um, I don't even know what I know what the high-end, like, corporate benefits of this are. I don't know how much anyone's going to enjoy this crossover. Like, to the extent there's going to be crossover. These really... I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm very wrong. I might be. I don't know. Most professional wrestlers who show up at MMA events don't get pops. The Rock would. Ray did. I forget which UFC event it was. There was one where they were leaning a little bit into. It might have been the fight with It was headlined by one of the Mexican, like, earlier this year during the kind of Mexican champion period of time. Rey Mysterio was at a UFC event and actually got the biggest pop of the night from the people that showed in the crowd. A lot of Mexican fans there. They knew who Rey was. But as a general rule, like, they've showed other wrestlers at events and nothing. The only thing I'd like UFC to take from WWE, can we let fighters have personalities, please, when they walk out? That's really all I want. That's all I want that's reasonably attainable. Like, they all just get their song, and then walk or jog or to the ring. Like it's just there's nothing there. There's no. We could use a little more pomp and a little more presentation here, just a little bit. All right. Last thing, yeah, I'll be brief with this, so we can be quick. So Dana White got asked about at the Contender Series thing. He was asked about, are you actually going forward with plans for the immediate rematch between Strickland and Adesanya? And he said, no, that's a bunch of stupid MMA sites spinning up nonsense. We're not sure what we're doing, and I had to put my head on my desk. My man, you said it. You were quoted. Not only were you quoted, all half of these people did was embed the video where you said it. Look, I've had my issues with the MMA media. Okay? I really have. And I'm technically part of it. And I've still got issues with it. Dana lashing out at them is almost a joke at this point. He does it because who cares? I mean this. Like, he could say the most vile, heinous things at MMA media, and there is zero repercussion for it. This is a consequence-free zone making fun of MMA media. Consequence-free. Not a darn thing he could say that would that would call down any sort of repercussions. I mean, this guy had a public fight with his wife, a public physical fight with his wife, and nothing happened. There's almost, like, short of a genuine racial slur, he's not going to get, there's nothing he can say that would that would come back on him in any way. In any way. But he's not happy that he said something he regretted, and then rather than say, yeah, got a little bit ahead of ourselves on the night of. I know we don't do this. No, just y'all misquoted me. Screw you. When all most of us did was, hey, here's a video link. Dude, he's so checked out. He is so checked out of all of this. I don't know who's going to replace him, but I'm getting to the point where I am looking forward to his retirement. I'm getting there. All right. That's all the news I had written down. So let's see if anything crazy has broken on Twitter. If not, we will do plugs and then get out of here. All right. Well, nothing crazy in the MMA space, but it's the internet, so there's always something crazy. Uh, all right. What do we got tonight? Plugs. Not a lot. The usual spate of professional wrestling and MMA coverage over at 411mania.com. MLW stuff on Thursday, WWE SmackDown on Friday, UFC event on Saturday. No Damn You Hollywood again this week. Next week, though, we're back for the Expendables 4. So we took basically September off because it sucked. Sucktember strikes again. If you're interested in a couple of other things going on over in the W2M network, there's a triple feature for three Guy Ritchie movies. Two of them came out this year: Operation Fortune Rouge de Guerre, The Covenant, and the third one they included in that. Snatch. So that's Mark and Ronnie Adams. Then Tuesday there will be an on trial for White Men Can't Jump. They're debating the original versus the remake. Mark and Jason Teasley. That is not a contest. The original is a classic of the genre. The remake should be deep fried in lava and the remains launched into outer space. And then again, we're back here next Sunday evening to record for UFC and ESPN Plus 86, and we will be previewing. No. Saturday. The next Saturday will be the 30th. There is no UFC event. There is one. So just a review next week. Week after, we will preview a fight night, the one headlined by Grant Dawson and Bobby Green. Let me have a look at that real fast. Look, when Dawson and Green is your main event, everything else has to be worse. Boy, that is a lot of lower mid-tier fighters. Good grief. We might get some decent fights out of it, but good grief. Not a lot to be excited about there on paper. So, 2 weeks, we'll do that. Next week, just a review and the news. All right. Thank you very, very much as always, everybody. I appreciate the heck out of you. Stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave.